Today I want to show you a tool for learning that I created for my students in 8th grade math. I'm going to show two different versions of the digital tool, and I'm going to apply some theories about metacognitive load. One of the things that I want to point out is that often learners tend to avoid using tools, kind of like the one I made. They do not use them early enough or at the right occasion. And in addition, some learners tend to use the tools too often or for the wrong purpose. I think that's partly because of the overload that the tools can often offer for these kids or students. And so by simplifying the tool that we give them, it might make it more user-friendly and they'd be willing to use it more often. All right, so here's an example of one of the tools I could have made. We're currently discussing the Pythagorean theorem. As you can see, I've got all sorts of cool stuff on this slide here. I've got what the Pythagorean theorem is. I've got it typed out, the definition. I've got in the blue there, I've got an example of the Pythagorean theorem. Up here in the right corner, I've got Donald Duck in Math Magic Land. Great video, one of my favorite videos describing the Pythagorean theorem, or at least using it. Down here we got Pythagoras saying he likes triangles, and down here in the bottom right corner I've got all the links that they're going to want to use in order to further their knowledge of the Pythagorean theorem. So if they want to know about the history, they can click here. If they want to practice using the Pythagorean theorem, they can click here. And if they want to do homework, they can click down in the bottom right corner. So there's just some examples of what I could do. All right. Now, if you noticed, that was very cluttered, chaotic, and otherwise distracting, just as written here. And it can derail a user from their task at hand. All right. They can get caught up in the pictures of Pythagoras or Donald Duck. The colors are very just distracting. The links take up half the page. So there's just a lot going on this page. And so here's an example of maybe something that's not the best for metacognitive load. It's probably too much going on in your brain because you're really, when you look at this slide right here, you're taking in all the information you see, including the colors and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to show you a second example of the same information I want my kids to get. All right. This one has just a few key points, and they're more of a bullet point. And then I've got one example. This is actually all the same information that I wanted the kids to use on the last slide. But as you can see, it's summed up much more precisely. The main concepts are on here, but there's no sentences. The colors have meaning. The key point and example are in yellow. I didn't just randomly use colors. I didn't do any twisting or turning or cool animations either. I felt that was distracting. Down here in the bottom left corner, if you notice, there's still links for them to practice. I'm missing one because one of the things on the last page was the history. I really don't care if the kids know the history of the Pythagorean theorem. So that's one thing that I didn't have to put on the slide, but I did anyhow just because I could. And I think that's sometimes something educators really forget to look at is what do the kids need? And that's all I need to put on here. So really I only have two links down here. The links are much more cleaned up. You don't actually see the URL. You can just click on the word and they could go to practice. That actually takes you to Khan Academy, or if they feel like they understand it, then they can click for the homework. So just a small version of nonlinear practice for these kids in order to further their understanding. So when looking at these two slides, this one is a little more or a little less load bearing for the kids to see and understand, as opposed to slide one, which just had a lot of information. Here are my references of some of the things that we talked about in this presentation, and my IST standards are at the